I'm kind of seeing how the mainstream media and the alternative side of the pandemic both use sensational fear-mongering to get people to look at their articles. So my dad called me this week. This was a month after he pretty dramatically cut contact with me and my sister. He completely freaked out about the war in Ukraine and told us that he couldn't talk to us anymore until we came to his side, basically. It was kind of shocking, like coming in the middle of what I thought was a pretty successful attempt to slowly de-radicalize him, which came from the breakthrough that we had in the family therapy session. I was even writing an entire essay about what I was doing and how it was working and how other people might be able to do something like it. But I've had that one on hold because it's looked like everything might have failed. But that's where my dad's call this week comes in. He left a message saying that he missed talking and he just wanted to catch up, so I called him back. And we ended up having one of the most constructive conversations about his beliefs that I have ever experienced in my life. My dad is QAnon adjacent, I would say. More like he was one of the original 9/11 truther conspiracy theorist influencers, if there was such a thing for the early 2000s. And then QAnon formed itself around beliefs like his. So following the QAnon currents, he's been mostly concerned with COVID conspiracies. So every conversation we've had since the pandemic began has at some point gotten to talking about how it's all a hoax and the vaccine is gonna kill me and stuff like that. But that's where things suddenly changed in this phone call. So in one of my conversations with my dad post the family therapy session, he asked me if I would be willing to consider blog posts and things about COVID conspiracy theories as long as they used government and health organization data to prove their points. And I've always engaged with his conspiracy theories a little bit. I've never believed them, but I've always been willing to talk about the less terrible ones. So I told him that was fine, and he took me up on that. And a few times between the therapy session in October 2021 and the beginning of the war this February, he emailed me these huge batches of posts from internet conspiracy rumor blogs. And to his credit, the posts stuck to using some kind of official data. So I took a look at what I had time for. And I found that, in every case, it took about 5 minutes to figure out how the author was deliberately misunderstanding the data to validate some fear or make themselves feel like they're smarter than the scientists. And then I would email my dad back to thoroughly but calmly and in as positive and generous terms as possible explain why everything on these posts was wrong. I figured that, after the success of our therapy session, that trying to debunk these claims might work out differently than it had in the past. But it didn't seem to, at least at the time. He just moved the goalposts back toward his higher order belief that global elites are lying about the pandemic to control us. But he was still less obsessive and angry, and he was willing to put these constraints on himself when talking to me about this stuff, so that was something, at least. And then the war started, and it seemed like all of that was gone. But here's what he said to me in the call that we just had, and I'm gonna look at my notes so I get this right from my best recollection, because who thought he would ever say this? Okay, quote, "You really got me with those articles. I should have checked to make sure they were right, and I'm being more careful about which ones I use now. I'm kind of seeing how the mainstream media and the alternative side of the pandemic both use sensational fear-mongering to get people to look at their articles." In 20 years of my dad being an avid career conspiracy theorist, I have never heard him say anything like that before. But that doesn't mean that he's turned around. He still believes that the vaccines are dangerous and all kinds of other counterproductive and terrible things. But I've never thought of getting him off conspiracy theories as a realistic goal. Like, conspiracy theories are his life. I've just wanted to get him to a place where he no longer supports and definitely doesn't spread the most awful beliefs that he picked up during the Trump era. He's always been willing to listen to me, but for him to internalize the things I've been saying when I debunk the anti-vaccine COVID conspiracy blogs is, like, just crazy. Like, he's actually willing to flatly dismiss conspiracy theory articles that I debunk, and not to move the goalposts again, but just to say, like, gotcha, that's why this is wrong. Thanks for telling me. At least with COVID conspiracies. And there's still a million more things to debunk. Still, that's something that I thought would never happen. And if that can happen with my dad, it doesn't mean it can happen with everyone, but it can certainly happen with a lot of people. The call was a bit of a one step forward, two steps back situation, but right now I just want to focus on the good part. I'll get to the bad stuff in a bit.